video. Click
It's
more.
a screen recording.
No, more. Where it says more, it shows the date.
No. This isn't on YouTube. This is on Twitter. But this was posted January 4th.
I don't go live on Twitter.
I know
Oh my.
someone had. That's what I'm saying. There are people that will record what you're saying in these streams and videos, and they would tag me on Twitter, telling me to check it out.
Okay.
The 2025 NBA draft has become one of the most anticipated classes in recent memory. It's not quite on the level of Victor Wembanyama and all those guys in 2023, although there is a French guy in this class. But in terms of depth of talent at the top, potential future stars in the NBA, the 2025 NBA draft class looks to be up there with any of these great classes we've had recently. And the first guy to talk about, the guy I'm going to talk about first all year long, is Cooper Flag. The hype for this guy just went completely out of control about a month and a half ago when he was participating in Team USA Olympic stuff before the Olympics actually started and was competing on the level with the best American basketball team we could put together, the team that went on to win the gold medal. Cooper Flag was on the select team playing against those guys, playing with guys like Brandon Pajemski, playing with guys like Jaime Jaquez, and holding his own, making plays out there. And he's such an interesting prospect for this class as well because he's basically impossible to make a comparison for. He's this great athlete. He's a great defender, improving offensive players, improved his jump shot. I've seen like Sean Marion comps out there. You got to be a crazy good defender at the NBA level if we're making Sean Marion comps out here. I've seen Franz Wagner out there a little bit, like a better defending Franz Wagner, but like some of the shooting issues that have come with Franz in this past year, kind of that is a comp for him. I've seen a little bit of Scotty Barnes out there, I guess. But the bottom line for him is he has kind of proved himself on an NBA level playing against those guys in the Olympic warm-up stuff. He is going to be an outstanding defender, an outstanding athlete, and in his freshman year at Duke, he's going to have an opportunity to be on a really good team and see what he looks like as potentially the number one offensive option on that team. And that's the question mark for him is he going to be able to be good enough offensively to be the number one pick in this class? Because if you're picking someone number one, especially in this class, you need them to be a franchise cornerstone level guy. And as good as he is defensively, as great of an athlete as he is, that offensive growth and improvement, getting to the rim, being able to shoot the ball, decision making as a guy that's like 6'9", 210, all that stuff needs to be there, and I think it will be. Next up, let's talk about the guy that for a lot of people right now is the second best player in the class, and that is Ace Bailey. He's like 6'9", 205. Some comps I've seen for him are Brandon Miller, basically, in terms of some of the smoothness of his game offensively, the body control. I've seen some people point him out as like a wing Anthony Edwards, if that makes sense. Like, doesn't quite have the guard skills that Ant has developed, but he's got a little bit of that shot chucker mentality that Ant came into the league with, but he's taller than Anthony Edwards is. He's got good length. Those are kind of the comps I'm seeing for him. And what is a theme for this class? The athleticism for this guy is crazy. Body control, getting to the rim, being able to finish at the rim, all that stuff is definitely a huge positive for him. And he's one of the younger players in the class. He just turned 18 as the recording of this video. At the time of the draft next year, he's still going to be just 18 years old with tons of room to improve and grow. And honestly, my biggest concern for him is just decision making and getting rid of that shot chucker label. Like, the reason that it worked out for Ant is because he became such an efficient three-point shooter and shooter overall. Like, as soon as he got to the league, by his second year in the league, Ant was a really good shooter. And Bailey just has to be able to get to that kind of level because he's going to shoot a ton, and he has that offensive upside that could potentially put him at number one in this draft, even over someone like Cooper Flag. But he's got to shed that Anthony Edwards label a little bit. Next up, let's talk about VJ Edgecombe. He's 6'4", 6'5", 180 pounds, and in terms of comps, it's hard to find for him. There was some Russell Westbrook stuff out there. I don't love that because Russ is such a rare athlete. I went with John Wall, but skinnier, and maybe shorter arms. That's not a great comp, but that's kind of some of the stuff that I've seen out there. Can get to the rim, great athlete, really quick, but I mean, Russ is just, for me personally, on a different level of athlete historically within the NBA for me to start comparing guys in high school to Russell Westbrook. And just like pretty much every player that's coming out of high school, in order to be a top tier level player, they're going to have to continue to grow and improve as a shooter. But some of the promising stuff with him was similar to Cooper Flagg. We got some Olympic stuff for him. During Olympic qualifying, he played for the Bahamas, and the statistics and the eye test for this guy were out of control. Like, he looked like he belonged immediately, playing alongside guys like Buddy Hield, DeAndre Ayton, playing against real, really good basketball players, like grown men basketball players, and he looked like he belonged. In terms of the upside to get to the first overall pick, I don't quite see that right now, just because the class is so loaded, and physically, he's on a lower level physically compared to some of the better guys in this class. And anytime you're making a like John Wall-esque comparison, I get concerned about someone like Emmanuel Mudiay. Some of you guys might remember Emmanuel Mudiay that got drafted to Denver and just didn't have the vision, didn't have the efficiency, and the athleticism, getting to the rim, all that stuff was there, but the actual basketball skills weren't really there. And so that's kind of the level for him. It's like he could be John Wall, or he could be Emmanuel Mudiay, and how close he gets to each of those comps, we're going to have to see throughout the season. And then I've got two guys that I am just so intrigued to watch throughout the college season. First up is Dylan Harper. He's 6'6", 215. I've seen some James Harden comparisons for him. I think it's just because he's left-handed and he absorbs contact, creates contact, gets to the line a lot, and so immediately people think of James Harden. But again, similar to the Russ thing, like that's such a high comparison. I see a little bit more like Jalen Brunson with him, also a lefty. But that's not a bad thing. I think some people are going to think that that's like a bad thing to compare him to Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson was a highly recruited high school player that just became a second-round pick in the NBA because he stuck around in college for a little bit. I see that a little bit with Harper because he's got more of a point guard kind of a vibe. He's not an outstanding athlete, but he's strong. He's got wide shoulders. And is like crafty is just such a terrible term. It makes crafty sounds like a guy that just is a stiff and can't move and is like playing 40-year-old YMCA basketball. But there's just something to this guy that he understands he's not an elite level athlete compared to some of the other guys in this class, but he's still able to get to the rim, get to the line a ton, and I like the professionalism of his game, where he's already kind of learning some of the tips and tricks. And again, reminds me of that Jalen Brunson, I guess, if you want to go all the way up there for that James Harden kind of mold. And I don't want to make it sound like he's a terrible athlete. He's still a really good athlete, but importantly, compared to some of the other guys in this class that are just better athletes than him, he's got a good wingspan too as well. So longer arms, good size for a backcourt guy, and I'm really, really intrigued by him. I could easily see myself talking myself into a top 2, top 3 spot for him by the time the draft rolls around, depending on how the college season goes. Now, I told you there was a French guy in the class. We're going to talk about him now. Nolan Traore. I apologize. I looked it up. That's how the internet says it was spelled, and that's what I'm going to go with. 6'4", 185, a little bit of a skinnier guy, but of course, because he's French, the comps out there right now is Tony Parker. Like that's just the comp. And in comparison to some of these other guys I've talked about, some of these other guards or wings, combo guards, whatever, more point guard vibes from this guy in international play. And that's very intriguing to me because we don't really draft like actual point guards anymore into the NBA. We kind of create them. Like you draft Anthony Edwards or James Harden and become lead ball handler guys, but you don't really have the instincts of a point guard. You just have the ball a ton and you create. But I can see some of those like actual point guard instincts while also having good size in Traore. And he's a nice mix of athletic with being quick and crafty. Like there's different levels of athleticism. A lot of the guys we talked about so far, are big leapers. They're going to finish at the rim in these crazy ways. Whereas Traore is more like quickness. He's more of a, change of direction, kind of crafty around the rim kind of guy. Not that he's not athletic. His athleticism is just a little bit different. And similar to Harper, I like some of the professionalism with which he plays, how he finishes around the rim. There's a decent mid-range game here in terms of some floaters and some pull-ups that I really like as well. And even though he's not as explosive of an athlete, him kind of leaning a little bit more into that point guard role makes him intriguing for me, especially because it's not like he's someone that's 6'1", right? Like he's someone that's going to show up and still have good size, but maybe have more of those point guard instincts to potentially fit in better with some of these other teams. For me right now, I kind of ordered it the way that I have them. Like those 5 guys in order I've talked about in the video is kind of where I'm at right now, obviously not having seen them play at the next level yet. Cooper Flag is still number 1 for me. The versatility defensively for him has to put him over everyone else. I'm extremely intrigued by Ace Bailey, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the first overall pick, hopefully to the Brooklyn Nets, because goodness gracious knows we need some young talent in Brooklyn. And it's also interesting how we've gone back a little bit to the traditional model of guys coming out of college, because the G League Ignite is no longer a thing. Like there's other avenues, other options for guys. There's more avenues than ever outside of college for these guys. But a lot of these players, with the exception of Traore, are going to be playing against each other in college, potentially in the NCAA tournament or within conference play. And that to me is going to be interesting in a class that is so strong and there's so many top guys. There could be like a real kind of rivalry being developed between these guys as we go through the draft.